when I'm using porn, I get to control the entire scene. Okay, what do I want? What position? What do I see? Right? And I can control everything. Well, now bring that to my marriage, right? It's like, yeah, right. If I'm going to control anything, I'm with another human being who has tons of feelings, tons of, oh, the kid's crying. Oh, like this sucks. Real sex, right? It's hard.
Hey guys, welcome to Husband Material. Today I have on the show with me Andrew Bauman, author of The Psychology of Porn, as well as Stumbling Toward Wholeness. He is a practicing therapist in Seattle at the Christian Counseling Center for Sexual Health and
Trauma.
There we go.
There you go. Got it. Well, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here.
Yeah, love the work you're doing. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, likewise. So Andrew is going to be on the show in not just one episode, but two.
Boom. Yeah. Bring it.
We have a lot to talk about. Andrew, could you start out by telling us some of your story from pornography? Yeah,
I feel like it's fairly, the classic tale, growing up, conservative, Christian, everyday church. Dad was a pastor. Nobody talked about sexuality. It was all hidden, secretive, but don't have sex before marriage. So you heard that. So that was about my sex education. And then my dad got caught sexually acting out, which started blowing up the facade, right? Blowing up the Christian perfect family that we were. And so as my parents' world started crumbling, their marriage started crumbling, I was still a child at the time, around 8 years old. So that kind of began the journey of feeling the weight of depression, feeling the weight of, where is my dad? I don't even know what's going on. We were told we were going on vacation to North Carolina, and my dad stayed in Florida, and that was the conversation. Later finding out that, trying to protect the kids from, sexual deviancy or whatever you want to call it, right? And yet nothing was defined for us, right? Nothing was, so my world is spinning. My world is ripped out from under me. And basically, as I begin to approach puberty and internet becomes a thing, finding something to soothe my soul, finding something to, that anxiety, I needed a place for that anxiety. I needed something to meet my pain. And that's where pornography began to really save my life in some ways, and really began to help me not go crazy. And so 13 years of where it becomes addiction, it becomes darker and darker, and porn begins to nearly kill me, enslave me. Where it begins to impact my relationships, my style of relating, how I engage women, how I become a sexual abuser, how I begin to devour women, and literally makes it nearly impossible for me to have healthy relationships as I'm into my 20s, and realizing like I am not okay. So 14 years later, 14 years ago, I end up in a psych ward. Nearly taking my life, and literally trying at that time using everything to numb, and nothing quite numb my pain like the beauty of a woman. And so slowly from that destruction, I began to rebuild the pieces. Therapist comes into my life, mentor, professor takes me in, and that's 15, 16 years ago, beginning to put the pieces back together. And now I'm, about 12 years sober and been in this work about a decade now, and I'm dedicated to helping men recover healthy sexuality. So that's the nutshell.
Yeah. And I love how we're on that mission on the front lines every day, working with guys who are in the same place where we were.
Yes, exactly.
In the book, in the book, you talk about how porn was the closest thing to heaven you could access at the time.
Yeah. We all are designed for beauty. And so you have all these management techniques, every man's battle and these bouncing the eyes and all these things that aren't helpful. And yet that's what we grew up with, manage it. And it's like, it didn't work for me. I tried, and I used shame to shame myself, self-contempt to beat myself into submission, prayers of trying to, if I could just cut off my penis, if I could just, feed my balls to a dog, like I could be somehow God pleasing. And it just never worked for me. We had, remember, a group of guys, again, good hearts. We had we called it the jackpot. And every time you masturbated, you had to put $5 in the jackpot. It was just like, so we just put $5 a bunch. And, it's not helpful. And so we need to create this new way of engaging beauty, where it's not this thing that we're scared of. We actually need to learn to make peace with. We don't need to run away from it. So it's not about, bouncing your eyes. It's about, what do you do with beauty? Do you honor it or do you devour it? And I learned how to devour beauty, and that was my pornographic mindset, rather than learning to honor beauty, learning to honor the imago Dei, the face of God in the other.
That's actually what I want to talk about with you now, because you have defined a concept that made this so clear for me, called PSR, a pornographic style of relating.
Yes.
That devouring of the other.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit more about, okay, what is this pornographic style of relating? How does that play out for somebody who's struggling?
So especially folks like me who grew up in a culture that didn't talk about sex, didn't talk about healthy sexuality, didn't talk about masturbation, didn't talk, rather than it was just shame, or rather than just no, but there was no tools given. So porn comes in and becomes the teacher, right? So here I am, 12, 13 years old, and porn begins to mentor me. So porn takes me under the wing, and it fills in the gaps that my parents were too ashamed, or, just did not talk about. The church did not engage in a helpful way. So when porn becomes your mentor, that's where I developed this thing you mentioned, pornographic style of relating. So basically, porn unconsciously teaches us how to relate to the world, right? So it just seeps in, it gets into our brain. It begins to teach us how to objectify rather than honor. It teaches us how to control, right? So one of the first categories of PSR, I talk about control, right? So when I'm using porn, I get to control the entire scene. Okay, what do I want? What position? What do I see? Right? And I can control everything. Well, now bring that to my marriage, right? It's like, if I'm going to control anything, I'm with another human being who has tons of feelings, tons of, the kid's crying. Like, this sucks. Real sex, right? It's hard.
And we got these. Yeah. And we received these purity culture promises when we were little.
Right.
That, okay, just hold your breath sexually until your marriage, and then you can get whatever you want and let it all out.
Right. Then it's just going to be this wild, great sex, right? It's just like, wait a minute. That's just not how it works at all. A lot of times you have some of the women who've been in the purity movement who become asexual. So they've cut off their sexuality. And then you have so many of these dudes that have become oversexed and have grown up on porn, and then put them together. How does that go, right? Boy, that's going to go well. It's not going to go well at all.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm hearing is that actually a pornographic style of relating and purity culture have a lot in common.
Yeah. Say more about that. What do you mean?
Well, they both can't handle beauty, right?
I like that. Yep. I like that. Yes, exactly.
And so in each case, it's ultimately a self-centered approach where it's all about me, whether
exactly
me getting what I want sexually or me being morally pure in the eyes of God. It's still me. Right.
Right. And it's so interesting. And I talk about this every day with folks, I didn't have sex before I was married, like that's the big thing. I didn't have intercourse, and it's just like, but you looked at a million women having it, men having sex every single day. It's like, no, you're not a virgin. It's just like, you're the opposite of a virgin. It's just like, we're so oversexed, and yet we had this cognitive dissonance that because I did not stick my penis inside her vagina, and it's just like, oh my gosh. And again, from my own story, it's like, I remember those days. It's just like, dry hump. And it's just like, this is not like, we have such a broken view of what sexual purity is, what integrity is. And that's why it's so important that, guys like us and women, and we start changing this conversation culturally.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you're giving us vocabulary with PSR to name these realities. So you talked about control. I think the next one is objectification.
Yep. Objectification versus honor, which we talked about, so I also named what's the healthy side, what's a redeemed category. Yeah. So for the first one, control, what's redeemed is freedom, right? Rooted in maturity, security of both partners. The next section is objectification. The redeemed category is honor, right? So when Mount Rainier is out in Seattle, right, there's an awe to her beauty. Wow, God made her well, right? So how do I look at Mount Rainier, right, versus how do I look at a woman and say, wow, she is beautiful. Like, her breasts are beautiful. Like, she is beautiful. Her body, her everything. God made her well. Okay, moving on, right? And I'm not going to take from her beauty. I'm not going to steal. I'm not going to park her out like a used car. I'm going to honor her, honor that God made her well, and I'm going to move on because she does not get to rule me.
Right.
She does not get, save my life. And so that's the difference of honor and honoring God, the Imago Dei, in her face.
I absolutely love that. And some guys, when they hear you talk about this, are going to be uncomfortable. Like, wait, he's giving me permission to enjoy the beauty of these young women who I walk by on the sidewalk. Like, Every Man's Battle told me, bounce your eyes.
Sure.
Don't think about that.
Right. And I say, it's more about how you engage it, not if you see it. Try to live in this world. You are going to be inundate. Our entire culture is rooted in the objectification of women. Marketing. Look at the halftime show. It's just like sex doesn't sell. The objectification of women sells.
Wow.
Yeah, and so
that's right.
The objectification of women sells. So that is what we have to engage in this world. Is how do we no longer objectify a woman? How do we honor her? Rather than devour her.
Amen. Yeah. And the categories I like to talk about are repressed sexuality, which is more purity culture, and released sexuality, like I'm going to do whatever I want, which is porn offer us, rather than redeemed sexuality. And
Exactly. Yep. The way I talk about it is shame versus shamelessness. Ooh. We somehow think, shame is obviously not the answer, what I grew up with. And then I have a lot of my liberal friends here in Seattle are just like, oh yeah, everything goes. Let's go have sex with everybody. It's like, wait a minute, that's not the answer either. Like that is not, I don't want to control anybody's sexuality. And yet there's got to be some middle space that we can nuance well to talk about.
Yeah. So that I can honor beauty. I don't have to own it. I don't have to possess it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's maturity. That's becoming a sexual adult.
Exactly. That's outgrowing porn.
Yeah. Because it's stunting our sexual development.
Exactly.
When we were little kids, it was keeping us as a sexual child.
Yes, exactly. The next category that I talk about in PSR is that of speed versus a gradual growing, which is kind of what you were just saying. Like when I was looking at porn, it was just always more. Like I need more. Click, next. What's going to do it for me, right? What's going to, and then for me, it came out, and this changes for each individual, but for me, it was like, as I began to date women, or, I've been bounced from girl to girl to girl, it was just, it mirrored my style of relating of, oh, maybe this next girl will be the answer, right? Versus just a healthy redeemed category is that a gradual growth, right? We don't fall into love, we grow into love.
Mm.
It's a mature thing. It's not this fantasy world
Mm.
that we've come to know so well.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, because when you become an adult and you have healthy relationships, they move slow.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
And that's how it grows strong.
Mm.
And in my book, The Psychology of Porn, I talk about this one, the healthy relationship indicator, which I use with my clients. And basically we map out, what is a healthy relationship? And you grow in connection through intellectual connection, sexual connection, spiritual connection, and emotional connection. And if we grow those together over time, that's a really healthy relationship. And yet so many folks that I work with either have a super high sexual connection, and then it's just like, wait, you're not growing intellectually or emotionally. And the graph ends up looking like a mountain rather than like a balanced approach to healthy growth and connection with your partner.
Yeah. So porn becomes this short circuiting.
Yes,
of the
exactly.
process.
Yes, exactly. Let's see. Do you want to go through the next category?
I mean, we might as well. I mean, we've already done the first three. So
Yeah. So the fourth one is a hunger, right? It creates that kind of that ravaging, right? That hunger. I just remember how imprisoning that felt. I need it, right, to be okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus the redeemed category of that is desire, right? It's separating the need from the want. No, I want you. I don't need you to be okay, but I want you. I desire you. And desire is such a beautiful thing when it's not based in that hunger.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that play out in my life. My first big long-term dating relationship was based on need.
Yes, right.
And that was that pornographic style of relating.
Yes, exactly. And we learn how to be enmeshed. We learn how to enmesh with our partners, because porn has become such a way of sustenance for us, such a thing of life, or at least artificial life. And so then we end up using women to become this kind of emotionally kind of needy little boys.
Yes, exactly. And so porn becomes the pacifier.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
And so then I traded that for my girlfriend, who became my emotional pacifier, helping me feel okay with myself. My other half, as they say.
Yep.
And this is what I see all the time is guys are going into marriage and thinking, this will solve my problem. This will meet my need because now I can have sex.
I won't need porn anymore.
She's a replacement.
Because my wife becomes my porn star. Exactly.
Bingo. Yes. Oh my word.
Yep. And it doesn't work.
Yeah. Your wife is not a sex doll.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And again, that's where a pornographic style of relating is so important, because it's like we can't just take our pornographic mindsets and then put them on our marriage, put them on our wives. And then we blame our wives for not being sexual enough or not having desire. So like, oh, wait a minute. Your wife's not your porn star? Yeah, you're right. You're right. You mean she's a human? You mean her pleasure matters? You mean it's not just about you? And it's just like, blows people's minds, because again, they don't even know that they've been brainwashed into this, culture of pornography.
Yeah, you're right. Porn was our mentor. It was our teacher. And as you say in the book, it was our lover.
Yes.
And it was a committed, consistent lover. It was our God.
Exactly. Yep. I talk about the idolatry of porn, and just basically like, do you know we're married to porn? Like, what happens if you look at it like a relationship rather than just, I have this porn issue. I hear that all the time. So it's like, wait a minute. You had this little baby issue, like you stubbed your toe, or you've been cheating on your wife for 25 years with another lover. Which would you rather say? Are we going to use language to minimize it? I have a problem with lust. Please pray for me. Or I'm masturbating to women's breasts and I'm hiding it from my wife and I'm acting, are you going to tell the truth of what you're actually participating in, that you're participating in the sexual exploitation of women, the violence against women, the sex trade. Like, are you going to be honest with what you're participating in, or do you have a lust issue?
Mm-hmm.
You know, are you going to minimize it to make it nothing?
Yeah. So all these lust management strategies are just puny and insufficient.
They're lying to themselves, right? So they don't feel the weight of their sin. Mm-hmm. So I'm always helping people re-language and actually feel the weight of what they're participating in.
Right. And if you're listening to this, if you're watching this right now and feeling that weight, know that our goal is not to make you feel bad about yourself. Right. I mean, where do you lead people once they kind of grasp what they're doing?
Sure. And so a lot of times there is a way you turn up the shame, right? Like in that sense of make them feel the weight of it. But then this is where it's so important, and where, you know, Romans 2:4 is so important. The kindness of God that leads to repentance is feel the weight of it. And then we can begin to be radically kind to the broken little boy who needed porn to be okay. You know, for me of like that little boy who was fatherless and whose mom went numb because of her own broken heart, and I was orphaned, and I can show immense compassion. You know, in the book I talk about blessing pornography, and it's like you're not blessing the physical pornography, you're blessing the story that led to pornography, right? You're blessing the broken little boy, for me in my own story, that needed it, where porn became apparent. And it's like, if I can radically bless that little boy, I don't have contempt for him anymore. And I can actually talk about this openly. And I can actually begin to be honest with my own life and my story.
Yeah, this is so good. This is so good. And it's showing me how in porn, we are participating in exploitation.
Yes.
And that's actually the overflow of the harm we have received.
Yes.
Right. So
totally.
So we can be completely honest about just how much violence we're doing through our consumption of porn, and see that it ultimately has roots in the violence that was done to us.
Exactly. Yes. And if we don't take our story seriously, you know, or our own pain seriously, a lot of time we just keep projecting that pain onto others. And so many issues with men specifically is our mother wounds. You know, and what we do with the feminine, right? And so for you, you know, the people who are watching this, what work have you done around your own mother wounds? Have you taken seriously that your mom used you as an emotional spouse, as a surrogate, as a, you know, what, like, have you done that work to see then how have you then eroticized, sexualized your wounding, right? And that's why we explore the type of porn that people look at. That's why we explore sexual fantasies. That's why, because we need to get back to the wounding.
Yeah. This is a kind of a prophetic moment, because that is the area of my story that I'm pressing into right now.
Wow. Nice.
Is that mother wound?
Because here's the connection. And again, I don't want to make it too personal for you, but this is just universal. This is just, you know, so I'm not just talking about you, but when we have, when we are used as a surrogate spouse, right, we have a very high emotional connection to our moms, right? But we don't have sex with our moms. So we need then to make the puzzle piece fit together. We need a high sexual connection without any emotional connection.
Wow.
Because we don't want any more emotional connection, because mom is filling up so much of my emotional tank. I want her to get away from me because I'm feeling devoured. So give me high sex and no emotion. What fits perfectly into that puzzle piece?
Pornography.
Bingo. That wasn't a hard one. Bingo. Exactly.
Yeah. So this is all part of, like, you know, that hunger. I feel that need.
Because of your own wounding, because of your own unhealed, you know, wounding, right? And that's just so common.
And so when you can go back into your childhood and experience healing at a deeper level, it frees us to be able to desire women without needing them, or even just to desire companionship and friendship.
Yes.
Even friendships with other men, I find myself sometimes becoming clingy, or sometimes out of need rather than desire.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
well said. Well said.
Because not everybody's married. Not everybody's going to get married. And we all need this, though. We all need intimacy.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Connection. And that goes to the next category, a style of relating of isolation, right? We learn sexuality in the, dim light of our computer screen or our phones. And we learn to do it in a hidden way, which kind of feeds that we don't talk about our sexuality. We don't talk about this stuff openly, and so part of that redeemed category is communion, is togetherness, coming out and speaking about this openly. Start talking about it. Start reading good books. Start talking, and again, not just managing, but actually being real with your pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of times in order to really access that pain, we need other people to help us. Mm-hmm. And if we try to do this alone, we're setting ourselves up for further struggles. And that's why your counseling center exists, right?
Exactly. Yeah, sadly, job security, right?
Yeah.
It's just like in the Christian world especially, which is kind of why we ended up going with a Christian in the title, is because it's like, this is an epidemic. This is 50% of pastors. This is 70% of Christian men. We've grown up in this culture of hiding. And sadly, it's just destroyed so many folks without even knowing it.
Yeah. So that's why we're here. Let's hit this last one. At least it's the last one I wrote down.
Yep.
Fantasy versus authenticity.
Yes, that's one of the most important ones, because it's actually quite easy. Some of your listeners might disagree, but as you're diving into this, it's actually kind of easy to stop looking at naked women on the internet. What's difficult, what takes time, it takes years, is changing the fantasy structure, right? Changing what you do with women in your mind, right? And so beginning to tell the truth, what we talked about earlier, beginning to be fully authentic. That's one of the living in truth. That's one of the first steps to break this fantasy world, right? So quick story, client comes in, okay, first 5 minutes of our session. And this is years ago. And he walks in and says why he's here, So he says, well, he's married. I walk into this gas station and I look at the woman on the counter. She looks at me. She goes, locks the door, and we just start going at it. We just start making out. And then he smiled. Okay. So I have seconds to make a decision. What am I going to do? And I look at him and I say, why haven't you killed yourself yet? I don't say that's great therapy, but I knew in the moment he had so much narcissism that he wasn't going to kill himself. But that smile went off his face in a very quick way. And he realized, I'm not there to celebrate his misogyny. I'm not going to, congratulations, you cheated on your wife, way to go, bro. Right. But he knew, like, I made it real really quick. And we spent the next 2 years trying to undo, right, his mindset, pornographic mindset of what he was doing to women and how he was trying to devour them. And so that took away that fantasy, right, of walking into the store and just, the barista's going to jump my bones. It's just like, no, like, that's ridiculous. But porn has taught us how to fantasize about all these unrealistic sexual expectations that aren't based in truth and authenticity. And so we got to make it real. We got to make it very real, because the fantasy world is not rooted in real life. And it's not true. Yeah.
Wow. So you basically jolted him into reality.
blew it up real quick. Yeah.
We actually have a a free course called the Sexual Fantasy Framework. If you want to learn more about where your sexual fantasies come from, I'm going to include a link to the show notes. And this is so crucial because those fantasies are there for a reason.
Yes, exactly. And if you don't judge them, but you're actually curious about them, they can actually lead to a lot of good freedom.
Yeah. So our fantasies can teach us a lot about ourselves. And when we go into them and understand them, that can really help us to come back into reality.
Oh, yeah.
What I find is that it's so much more hard to unlearn these pornographic styles of relating.
Yes.
It's so much harder to unlearn than if we were just learning.
Oh, totally. Exactly. And that's where it comes to reparenting. So much of this healing journey is learning to reparent the traumatized little boy, little girl inside of us, right? That's just hurt. And we have to relearn, reparent how to engage.
Yeah. And the image in my mind, which I think I got from Nick Stumbo, is this ball of yarn that's so tight. And there are all these different threads and stories that are in our sexual fantasies. And when we can, as you said, stop judging them and drop the fantasy, live in reality, we can begin to unwind those threads a little bit and become more flexible, and our sexual fantasies don't have to control us anymore.
Yes. Amen.
Yeah.
So true.
Did I forget any of the other categories in PSR?
Oh, I think we covered it.
Awesome.
Flew through that. But yeah, I hope that's helpful framework for your listeners. And I know it's, helped me make sense of it.
Yeah. So what is the opposite of PSR?
Healthy sexuality. And again, healthy sexuality is what we're trying to, even now, this year, coming out with another book, the Sexually Healthy Man. And I think because of the management of, there actually hasn't been very many good resources on what healthy sexuality is. Well, so we tear down this, this pornographic mindset. We tear down, we look at the misogyny and the sexism in the culture, and we begin to see this more clearly. Well, then what's left? And that's where it's like, we got to begin to build this framework of what do we have? What can we learn from others who are more sexually liberated, who don't live in shame? Like, how do we build a healthy sexual framework that's, rooted in the belief, the faith in Jesus, and actually have a beautiful sexuality, healthy sexuality, mutually pleasing, honoring sexuality.
Yeah. Even a Christ-like sexuality.
Yes, for sure.
So not lustful, not controlling, not objectifying, pornographic, but truly loving.
Exactly. Yeah. And mutual. And, I think some people think, well, if it's healthy, it's not going to be exciting, or it's not going to be, and it's just like, no, like, that's the thing. It actually becomes deep. It actually becomes beautiful.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, when there's awkwardness and pain and kids messing around in the other room and work gets to be a part of it, and it kind of taints it, and you're trying to figure out this sexual experience with another person, and you're both broken and you're trying to get your underwear off, and it's so real.
Yes.
What you're saying is that's actually all part of it.
It's actually all part of it. Actually, what grows the intimacy and the connection in such a beautiful way, right? If I see the stretch marks on my wife's belly, can I kiss them? Can I bless them? Because she warred to give birth to 4 of my children, of our children. Her body, her breasts fed our kids. Like, right? You can't honor when you're objectifying. You can't honor the scars. You can't honor the stretch marks. You can't honor if breasts are saggy from feeding children. It's not like, you can't honor what's real, what's true, what's beautiful about my wife.
You're showing me just how much pornography has shaped our sexual imaginations.
Yes. It's deep.
Yes. And how much more there is when we can unlearn a pornographic style of relating.
Yes.
And with the help of Jesus, with the help of trained professionals and community around us and great resources like your books, like Husband Material, we can grow into sexually mature adults.
Yes. Amen.
Who can handle beauty.
Exactly.
Who can enjoy beauty as God intended. Man.
Exactly.
Awesome. Andrew, thanks so much for this part 1.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and let's get on with part 2. How can people connect with you if they're just listening to this one episode?
Yeah. So you can check out my website, Andrew J. Bauman, BAUMAN.com, AndrewJBauman.com, and then also my business website, www.christiancc.org.
Awesome.
Also follow me on Facebook, author page. Yep.
And stay tuned for part 2 coming right up.